Hello everyone, Jason here again. Today we'll continue with the book You Can Master Disease by Bernard Jensen. We'll start on chapter 2 today. The title for chapter 2 is What Determines Ideal Health? The quote here is by Sir Andrew Clark. He is the physician to Queen Victoria, or he was the physician to Queen Victoria. It's over 100, 200 years ago. The quote states, "Health is that state of mind in which the body is not consciously present to us, the state in which it is a joy to think, to feel, to be, to see." How right on that is. If our body's in perfect health, we're not even aware of it. Don't have those aches, the pains, the tiredness, etc. In ascertaining what determines health, we may as well aim high and consider the ideal in bodily health. This ideal can be reached only when a patient has been taught how to live healthfully. Even though he may be in such a condition that he cannot attain perfect health in every respect, still he will have the ideal goal in mind that he should constantly strive to reach. Many doctors have studied about and worked for so long with disease that they have lost sight of what good health really means. That's so true today. How to become normal and stay normal has little to do with the treatments and so-called cures used to combat disease today. We know that if we have clean, healthy blood and tissues, there is no need to worry about disease. Throughout this book, I have attempted to present an ideal of good health toward which we can work through the application of basic health principles and methods, which I know will work. What is the, in quotes, normal we should strive to attain or maintain? How can we best judge what is normal? Let us consider the manner in which that pressure of the blood, which today is considered to be normal, in quotes, is arrived at. Some 5,000 cases may be checked in determining the average. This average blood pressure, however, is determined by testing people who are heavy meat eaters, who have been living on devitalized food, etc., and therefore does not really signify what should be termed a normal blood pressure. Insurance companies have found in the last 15 to 20 years that the general blood pressure has dropped below what was formerly had been considered normal. So a new norm has had to be established. In a system developed many years ago by Louise Kuhn called facial diagnosis, he used the so-called normal person as the starting basis, which is something not done in average diagnosing. He placed before us the ideal of sculptured Greek art and tried to determine the contours of the perfect human body and what its appearance should be. He found that in various disease conditions, we depart from the normal in appearance. He called these abnormal appearances encumbrances. Kuhn found that these encumbrances in various parts of the body, the neck, the shoulders, the arms, the wrists, the glands, the calves of the legs, and the protruding abdomen. The body which he exemplified as the body beautiful had perfect symmetry, aesthetic roundness, and the head neither too large nor too small. The forehead was smooth. There was no excess flesh, no puffiness of the eyelids, no extra tissue around the ears or in the earlobes. The eyes were clear, the nose well formed. He knew that many factors could mar this beauty, such as adenoid tissue, which caused deformities in the nose, kidney troubles that caused puffiness under the eyes, heart troubles that caused puffiness in the upper eyelids. He regarded swollen tonsils as an encumbrance that interfered with proper breathing. He said the perfect body had beautiful curves, not overdeveloped, had no straight lines, for these would indicate that internal encumbrances were causing the thinness. Today, too little consideration is given to the normal appearing body when a state of health is being evaluated. Following is a word picture of the ideal normal appearance, constructed from information I have gathered over a period of time, which may help you to judge a person's state of health by his general appearance. Good general health brings some color to the face and the skin of all parts of the body. When the chemistry of the body is in proper balance, the skin is clear, soft, slightly moist, and somewhat pink. The hair is plentiful and lustrous. There is no indication of brittleness or excessive dryness. The eyes are bright and clear, with no dark circles under them. The whites of the eyes are clear, not blue, red, or yellow. The tongue is pink. The breath is sweet. The muscles are firm and strong. The chest broad and deep. The weight is proportionate to height and age. The posture is upright, the carriage pleasing, the nerves steady, the joints limber and free from calcium deposits and stiffness. The organs are working perfectly without sensations of heat, cold, pain, soreness, fatigue, uneasiness, heaviness, swelling, or pressure. There is no awareness of encumbrance to interfere with body function. The person with a healthy body feels alert, active, vigorous, ready for activity and glad to be alive. A child in good health does not have to be told to play or rest. It is the natural thing for him to do. This is the picture of the normal appearance to work towards. In looking at appearances that are far from the ideal, we may see such unlovely disfigurements as varicose veins. This condition may result from lack of mineral elements such as silicon, calcium, and phosphorus. It may develop from faulty carriage or sedentary occupation. Most mail carriers, army officers, and others who use their legs a great deal have very few difficulties in these extremities. In some persons who become toxic and catarrh-laden, the manifestation may be abnormal discharge from the ears, eyes, mouth, nose, or any body orifice. If the minerals iodine and silicon are lacking in the body, the glands are particularly affected. When there is a lack of iodine, which is concentrated in the thyroid gland, the skin shows symptoms of dryness and the hair of brittleness. These outward indications are a definite sign that there is not enough iodine in the thyroid gland. In time, this lack can develop conditions of goiter and nervousness. Many abnormalities can be prevented in the first place by recognizing what a normal body should be and trying to keep the normalcy. Silicon gives the magnetic quality to the body, keeps the nails and hair from becoming brittle, and the skin from becoming dry. Silicon is found especially in the nerves, and then the delicate sheath covering the nerves, which acts as the conductor of messages from the brain to the muscles. Proper coordination between the mind and muscle structure depends on the amount of silicon in the nerve sheath. The organic structures of the body do not function properly without silicon, and disorders such as psoriasis and liver and pancreatic disturbances may develop. Deficiency of other mineral elements in the body give warning by certain external signs that imbalance exists. If we have waited until deficiency symptoms appear before normalizing the diet and the living habits in general, we should readjust these immediately in order to establish balanced chemistry of the bloodstream. The businessman who wants to regain his health when he retires usually buys a ranch or a farm so he can get away from the city noise and nerve tension. He has learned what Tupper learned, that, in quotes, pain addeth zest to pleasure, and teacheth the luxury of health. End of quote. The person who takes time out for skiing, fishing, or any sport develops mental freedom, body tone, a good lung structure, and a good health reserve. He does not fall victim to an epidemic, but in most cases is free from disease. Natives who live in the mountains of Tibet enjoy long lives because they are carefree, because they eat the simple, natural foods, and because of the altitude, which helps to maintain a good blood count. The people of Bolivia live long and healthily because they are not under pressure. They are not forced to do their jobs within a certain number of hours. When the body is not artificially stimulated and forced to work, it can build up faster than it breaks down, and good health is maintained. And that's so true. In fact, all the studies that have come out on even if you sleep for 8 hours a night, but if you don't go into that deep REM sleep, your body does not self-heal. There's so much around this. Continuing. Experiments with animals have shown how disease can be developed and health regained by controlling the environment and the types of food eaten. Dr. Sansom in Santa Barbara, through feeding coffee to test animals, developed high blood pressure, rectal troubles, and hemorrhoids in them. Interesting. Additional tests in which starches and refined sugar were fed developed pancreatic breakdowns and diabetes. When put on a healthful diet, these same animals regained good health. I mean, that's incredible. That's basically saying that if you have pancreatic issues along with diabetes, that can be reversed just by diet. Mice, when fed on a diet lacking vitamin A, develop eye diseases, and when fed vitamin A, their eyes were restored to normal. In experiments at the Randley Farms in New York, in which animals were fed on pasteurized milk, they developed abnormal bones, flatulence, intestinal disorders, coated tongue, and died prematurely from tumors, cancers, nephritis, diabetes, or some other disease. Wow, that's just from pasteurized milk. Dr. Francis Pottinger, Jr. of Monrovia, California, has proven these consequences in extensive experiments of feeding cats and kittens pasteurized milk. Some of the conditions developed were brittle bones and lung and bronchial disorders. These conditions were changed by feeding the animals natural milk. Other experiments also have shown that when fed raw natural milk, as it comes from the cow or goat, every animal lived a normal span of life. You know, I can see this even in my own area, where we have Amish and Mennonites. They both drink raw milk, raw cheese. They make their own cheese. And I've noticed when you look at those individuals, they just radiate vitality. And I notice their bones tend to be, they just look healthy. They look solid and strong. Continuing. It has been proven that pigeons fed a diet of polished rice will die in 4 or 5 days. They develop a condition closely resembling beriberi. These same birds, on the verge of death and no longer able to control their muscles, could be brought back to normal in a very short time, sometimes as short as 12 hours, merely by the addition to their diet of the hulls of rice, or the whole unpolished rice. We could go on describing experiment after experiment to show that by living on abnormal food, an abnormal body is developed. By abnormal food, we mean food from which the vital elements have been removed in refining processes, have been destroyed by heat in canning, or preserved with chemicals for bottling, canning, or packaging. Seasonings such as salt, pepper, soda, and vinegar are irritants and blood destroyers. Vinegar destroys red blood cells at the same rate as does alcohol. 1/5 of the body's red blood cells can be destroyed with a pint of vinegar. How can we expect a good, clean blood stream if we include canned and pickled foods in our diet? The healthy side of living demands foods that build a vital bloodstream that is toxin-free. The average person, when he goes to the doctor, is halfway between being well and being sick. He may not be sick enough to have a disease name tagged onto him, but his condition is dangerous nevertheless, unless he is told how to prevent further complications that may develop from unhealthful living habits. For years, I have contended that the average person eats too much bread. I am convinced that the average patient coming into my office is starch-logged and most of all, bread-logged. I've gotten my best results by having them discontinue the use of bread until they have become normalized. In most cases, bread produces considerable fermentation in the bowel. I am not against bread when it is properly made from freshly ground whole grains, but we do not have a standard loaf of bread that is good for our health. I'm going to relate part of a diary I read one time, recorded by a man who tried to live on white bread and water. He could have lived longer and in better health on water alone. Many experiments have been made in recent years to prove that the use of white bread is injurious to the body. Most of these have been made on animals. One of the most interesting that have been made on man was made by Dr. Ambrangowski of Australia upon himself. He related it as follows. On the first day, I ate nearly 1/3 of a loaf for breakfast, and for lunch and tea, I finished the other third, so that 2/3 of a loaf of white bread was my food this day. I felt very thirsty and had to drink a great quantity of water. I went to bed apparently satisfied after a good day's work. When I woke the following morning, my palate was dry and sticky. I had a languid feeling of depression, as if I had been imbibing alcohol the night before. There was no freshness about me, as was the rule under fruit diet, an inclination to work. I am usually regular in my bowels, and especially under a fruit diet. I never get up in the morning without an unmistakable and urgent call of nature. But there appeared nothing of the sort this morning, and I had to go unrelieved. When I appeared at the breakfast table, my fine appetite from the day before had quite left me, and I could not look at the anemic, white, and sinfully poor-looking stuff called bread without a slight shudder. When putting it into my mouth, I found it tasteless and dry. It would not produce enough saliva to masticate it properly, and I therefore decided to add butter and honey to it as a lubricant. On this morning, I managed 5 ounces, and for tea, 5 ounces again, so that half the loaf was left over at the end of the day. My feelings, meanwhile, had not improved. My thirst increased. I was tired and unwilling to work. I felt stuffed and headachy. The bowels had to be evacuated by an enema. I went to bed early, and my sleep was restless and unrefreshing, while dreams worried me the whole night. And in the morning, I got up as if still drunk. No call from nature, no energy for work, no appetite for food. I felt almost disgusted with myself. Still, I decided to go on with my experiment. 12 ounces was all I could swallow on the 3rd day, in spite of the liberal addition of butter, honey, and water. My working capability was quickly leaving me, And instead, that tired feeling, which seems the possession of half the civilized nations, had got hold of me, and I only wanted to be left alone. Artificial help had again to be called in for the relief of my bowels before I went to bed. On the fourth day, by forcing myself to eat, I managed to stuff about a third of a loaf, and went about my work in a half-dazed manner, feeling all the while heavy and slow in body and quite cloudy in my intellect. On the fifth day, I started again this loathsome, dead, and poisonous diet, but could eat only one slice for breakfast. After dinner, consisting again of a thin slice of this chalky abomination with butter and honey, I had to go a fairly long trip on my bicycle, a trip which, under fruit diet, is always a real pleasure to me. On this occasion, I managed to reach my destination in about twice my usual time. After a considerable stay, I started my homeward journey, but alas, what had become of my strength? I was wobbling on my bicycle like one drunk. My breath came quickly. I was hot and dry, and so weak that I could hardly carry the bicycle over a wet part of the track. It took me a good while to get on the machine, and then I almost despaired of ever reaching home. However, I managed it eventually, but in such a state of utter collapse that I was unable to speak. Thus ended my experiment with the highly praised staff of life, which more deservedly should be called the staff of death. In the accompanying newspaper clipping, we see that someone else reached the same conclusion I have concerning bread. My cases of migraine headache responded almost immediately, and intestinal disturbances were lessened considerably just through leaving bread out of the diet. The ignorant Indian, Native American Indian, lives to be 100, but the smart doctor and the educated man die at the average age of 49. In determining good health, we must have knowledge in these days of hamburgers and soda pop. It is important to know what is good for us and what is bad. In our little retreat library pictured here are hundreds of books attesting to the philosophy and practice presented in this work. In all parts of the world, people who live the longest and have the healthiest bodies are those who exercise sensibly, eat frugally of natural foods, do not worry, rest, balance their day physically and mentally, and do good for one another. I am sure that if we would apply some of the principles followed by people who have good health in other parts of the world, and who seem to know what a normal body really is, we would enjoy better health as well. So that concludes chapter 2. Then again, just the wisdom that comes from Dr. Bernard Jensen is incredible. I hope you're enjoying this. And next time we'll continue with You Can Master Disease.